Ugh.
That's not good.
You know what?
I think we have to take it out.
We're going to talk real quickly about the tools used to take that gas tank out. The Haynes manual doesn't really tell you what you need. It just tells you the steps to go through. So we'll obviously be going through those. However, these are the tools that I found really helpful for this evolution. And almost all of them come from Harbor Freight. So you don't need to ball out on your tools. You can if you want. You don't have to. We're going to be pulling a lot of fuel lines today. Vent lines, fuel lines, generally the same thing in the back end of the FJ60. Most of those are pushed over a flared end, like little nipple piece. And a lot of times that nipple piece is plastic. So you want to be very careful. You don't want to do like a lot of like up and down wrenching on it, even though that is instinctually what is going to like get the hose off. Don't do that. What you're going to want is some picks. These help because you can just slide in there next to the hose, kind of give it a wiggle, move it around the inside diameter of it and kind of like break it free and then give it a pull. Works very well. For the really big one, from the fuel filler neck down into the gas tank, there's a really big, not very flexible at all hose. So we're going to use that to get it off. And then there's hose clamps. The hose clamps, I have historically just Baja blasted my knuckles off on these things. Like you think you've got it and you're trying to pull it down, but it's indented into the fuel line and then your hand slips and there goes your knuckle skin. You can wear gloves. I don't love gloves. I'm not very dexterous in gloves. Just a pair of pliers. I prefer needle nose for this task. Personally, I think that's personal. You can use channel locks. You can use a regular pair of pliers. I like being kind of farther away so I can see where I'm pushing the little clamp guy. And sometimes they're just not going to come out. It's just like that's what's going to happen. So fuel line cutter, I don't actually know what the like legal name of this thing is. Pat calls it the buck tooth triangle, which, I don't know, that's a fair description, I guess. After fuel lines are out, you're going to have to take quite a few bolts out. There's bolts on the, shield, on the various pieces that connect to the gas tank. I mean, there's bolts all over the car, right? A lot of them you really can't get to. Extenders. It's the answer. Just get yourself a nice quality extender. We can use something this tall because the truck is so lifted. Something this big is maybe like, this is like a 10-inch foot long one. Probably a little more helpful if you're at a stock height. Most of the bolts that we have encountered on our 1984 Land Cruiser are a 10 millimeter or rusted down to a 9 or 8. But they were 10 when they started. So honestly, just get yourself a bunch of 10 millimeter sockets because they will run off on you. You will drop them and it's the one you need. But Harbor Freight has honestly really great deals on just a whole set of them. You kind of can't go wrong. You could also have some aftermarket bolts in there, so maybe get yourself a variety. To get said bolts out, ratcheting drill. Not a requirement. You can certainly use a regular ratchet. However, these bolts are old. They're corroded. They're probably seized. You're either going to get them out really easily or you're going to shear them off. Either way, they're coming out. So I just, I go with the ratcheting one. Save myself, that kind of effort of just sitting there like wrenching around on it for no reason. This goes kind of across the board. Anything that you're taking out that you need to replace, you need to remember where those lines go. Even if you're going to replace those lines, you really want to remember where they go. Take it one step at a time. Don't gut everything and have to start fresh. However, if you want to label those so you know where they go, color electrical tape. Very handy, very simple, super cheap. If you have a label maker, that also comes in handy. I do find that labeling something specific, it gets kind of onerous. Up to you. So yeah, that's all the kind of standard tools. I will say one tool you should probably almost always have on deck when working on an old car is either an angle grinder or a Dremel with a cutting wheel. Because if you can't break the bolt off, it still has to come out, you might have to cut the bolt off. You're going to see through this evolution, we end up breaking and cutting quite a few things. We always have an angle grinder on hand. Ours is, again, from like Harbor Freight or like the cheap one from Home Depot. It really doesn't matter. angle grinder with the cutting wheel, and the most important thing you can have, your PPE. Make sure you cover your eyes. You don't want to like go blind being, you know, that far away from your cutting operation or having a pick go through your eyeball. Wear your PPE. It's the best you can do. Safety squints are not safety. Last, I think one of the most important things you can have is this right here. That's your phone. Take before and after pictures, especially if you're going to go through the effort of color coding stuff. You're not going to remember it. When you set those hoses down on Tuesday and then you come back like 3 Wednesdays from now because you were waiting on parts to come in, you're not going to remember what they were. Take a picture. Before, after, where it's going, everything. Take a picture. There's a bee in the garage, so if you see me freak out. All right, so Haynes manual. That's going to cover lowering the gas tank, which is what we're going to do today. So we're going to go to Chapter 4, Part A, over here to Paragraph 4. This side is the 60 series diagram, and this side is the 80 series. So we're going to stay over here. And we have everything that we need, so we're kind of going to follow these instructions as best we can. I'll put the Haynes instructions in the captions. Once you have that pinch clamp pulled down, you want to be real careful not to break that flared nipple that's inserted into the hose. I want to make a quick correction to some of the stuff you're about to see in the video. We had removed all of those red lines because we thought that blue piece would drop down with the tank. Ours did not. So what you actually want to do is you want to remove all these green pieces so it comes down easily. But it's okay for us because we're going to have to replace all these lines anyway. But the green ones are the ones you want to do. I'm like really conscious of like not breaking the plastic pieces.
Before you disconnect anything.
Even though we're going to replace all of these lines anyway, we wanted to mark exactly which one was which to make it easier down the line, especially coming back to this evaporative separator. Now these lines were not budging, so you can tell I get the pick out. Now you want to be really careful when you're using a pick not to go, perpendicularly into the end nipple piece because you don't want to shear that off. Now this clamp is not a pinch clamp style, it has a little Phillips head screw on it, and ours was completely cooked. So as you can see, it got dremelled.
Oh, I have a glove on this hand.
Alright, now we have to detach that? You're gonna want your big picks for this one because it is a wrestling job. I am not envious of future us for having to put this back on. Unfortunately for us, this protective shield was doing more harm than good, and it was on a one-way straight out. And tragically, every single one of those bolts sheared off, so I don't know how much replacing there's going to be. Alright. Literal rat's nest, huh? In some amazing stroke of luck, though, the only ones that we need to put back in did come out. We pretty quickly realized that we missed something because that jack wasn't high enough to support the gas tank due to the 4.5-inch lift on the truck, and the gas tank didn't come tumbling out when we released those support straps. So we knew it was hung on something, but it took a minute to figure out what. That's not a bucktooth triangle.
Watch, ready, hold on. He's on my own camera.
Okay, well, that's fair, but you kind of have to have it open to know that. We figured it was easier to cut the other end of those lines that we had detached from the evaporative separator than try to pull them apart at this point. We are wholly replacing these on this truck, so if you're just doing a direct gas tank swap, I would consider trying to get the clamps off, vice cutting them. By this point in time, Pat was getting a little frustrated. It took me a little convincing to get him to not be under the gas tank while he tried to kick it out. What do you see?
Yeah, there's a pipe in the front.
Jimmy's in the well. What? It is really not advised to hang your gas tank off of the suction tube, especially if you need to reuse that part. But we don't. The new gas tank came with one, and we just needed to snip these out. We just didn't realize we hadn't for some reason or another.
No holes.
And she's out. Actually, it looks pretty good. All in all, it was a pretty straightforward task and more a lesson in learning how to read a diagram and not making assumptions about what's going to come out of the truck. Hopefully you can learn from our mistakes and that'll make your job a little bit easier. Peace out! Thanks for watching and we'll meet you there on the next one.